Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we are looking at Bill C-286, which is a private member's bill from Mr. Redicop. He is a conservative member from Saskatoon West. And this actually caught my attention, and I wanted to read through this and see if we could figure out if this is a good bill, if we should be supporting this, or if this is just a way to, I guess, pander. So what we're going to go through here is we're going to go through the actual text of the bill, and we're going to see if this is something we should be supporting. So no more doctors driving taxis. My private member's bill C-286 will streamline foreign credential recognition and allow newcomers to work in their trained field. I agree with this in concept, but we need to see what it actually says. So, an act to amend the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. This enactment amends the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act to authorize the Governor and Council, after consultation with the provinces, to make regulations in relation to the recognition of foreign credentials. Preamble. Whereas the Government of Canada is committed to an immigration system that allows Canada to welcome newcomers from around the world, whereas the Government of Canada is committed to a successful integration of permanent residents into Canadian society, whereas the Government of Canada acknowledges that recognizing the foreign credentials of permanent residents is essential to their successful integration, whereas some newcomers to Canada seeking to work in certain professions or trades face hurdles and uncertainty regarding the assessment of their educational credentials by Canadian organizations, and, in the case of professions or trades for which licensing by a federal or provincial authority is required, regarding the likelihood of their being licensed by that authority. And whereas the Government of Canada is committed to securing, in cooperation with the provinces, due recognition of the foreign credentials of permanent residents and to enhancing the transparency of their credential assessment and licensing processes in order to promote certainty for those seeking to practice their profession or trade in Canada. Now, therefore, Her Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the Senate and the House of Commons of Canada, enacts as follows. This act may be cited as the Recognition of Foreign Credentials Act. The Immigration and Refugee Protection Act is amended by adding the following after Section 87.4. 87.4.1, number 1. The Governor and Council, on the recommendation of the Minister of Employment and Social Development, after consultation by the Minister with the provinces and the Minister of Labour, may make regulations prescribing the foreign diplomas, certificates, or credentials of foreign nationals who apply for permanent resident visas as members of the prescribed class of federal skilled workers or of a class referred to in an instruction given under paragraph 10.31a that are equivalent to Canadian educational credentials for the purposes of this act. Definition: Canadian educational credential. 2. In this section, Canadian educational credential means any secondary school diploma or any post-secondary diploma, certificate, or credential that is issued on the completion of a Canadian program of study or training at an educational or training institution that is recognized by the provincial authorities responsible for registering, accrediting, supervising, and regulating such institutions. So in my mind, this is a great bill, assuming that it passes jurisdictional hurdles that it will, of course, have. Because, okay, so we need to do a little bit of basic labor law here. There are two groups, or two classes of workers in Canada officially. You have federally regulated workers, and you have provincially regulated workers. Federally regulated workers are generally, not always, but are generally in the transportation sector. So airlines, trains, boating, anything that is cross-provincial. And then, of course, there are others like media, etc., etc., etc. But most workers, the vast majority of workers, are regulated provincially. So teachers, provincial. Doctors, provincial. Engineers are provincial. So while this is a great idea, this has some issues in the jurisdictional boundaries, and depending on how much weight you put on jurisdictional boundary, I don't personally put that much personal weight on it, but I do understand that as a fact of law, there are provincial jurisdictions and federal jurisdictions, and they're there for a reason. So if we are taking those provincial and federal jurisdictions, I think what we might end up have happening here is a similar situation to which we've seen the childcare and the carbon tax. Because effectively what's going to have to happen here is that the federal government is going to have to talk with the provinces and each of the provincial bodies that are in charge of regulating each industry based on educational credentials and other necessities that these organizations need to prove that you are, in fact, a qualified structural engineer, because, that could be important. So I would imagine most provinces have like an engineering board. So all the types of engineers have to go through this specific engineering board to get credentials and to be legally registered as a licensed engineer in that province. Same thing happens for teachers, etc. So if you're able to have worthwhile, meaningful conversations with the provinces, and the provinces agree to have certain immigration-related credentialing done by the federal government rather than the provincial government, that could be a great thing for immigrant workers here in Canada. I am just worried that this ends up being a little bit of a trap, in the sense that it makes this member, Mr. Redicop, look really good. And again, this is a good bill. The question is, what is the enactment of this even going to look like? And I don't think we even know that yet, but I think if we look at the childcare and we look at the carbon tax and see how those negotiations went, you can kind of see where this is possibly going to head. And as of now, I think we should support this bill, but keep in mind that it's probably not going to have any immediate effect. And even if it does have an effect in the future, it's going to be very dependent on the province's cooperation. Without the provinces cooperating, this means nothing, except for federally regulated workers. And for the most part, outside of the engineering area, I don't see that there being too many federally regulated workers that would be affected by this bill. So that's kind of how I see this. This is a good bill that has some footnotes that needed to be determined later by the provinces and by the federal government. If you enjoyed this video and you enjoyed the analysis, please like and subscribe. And if you are really interested in learning more about different things that are going on in Canada right now, check out my website, laborliberty.ca. Until tomorrow, everybody, have a fantastic, fantastic evening. Peace, y'all.